I knew something was wrong the moment Patricia from HR knocked on my office door and said, "Hey, you forgot to initial the new NDA update." I never forget anything. That's exactly why CoreLink systems had been running like a well-oiled machine instead of a dumpster fire for the past 15 years. Still, I signed the paper, handed it back, and went straight back to finalizing the security protocols for the $300 million Macrovia merger. My name is Marcus Delaney, 49 years old, and I'd been the senior integration security architect at CoreLink for 15 years. Not the loudest guy in the room, not the ping-pong crowd, not one of those developers writing manifestos about company culture. I was the guy who made sure our merger protocols passed federal compliance, who built the secure integration between Macrovia's legacy systems and our back end that had been patched through 5 different CTOs. The boring stuff, the critical stuff, the stuff they didn't even know they needed until it broke. That morning, I had 3 monitors running, a lukewarm bourbon coffee getting cold on my desk, and a sticky note that said, "Check Federal Clearance Renewal, Clause 9, circled in red ink. Behind me, the office buzzed with typical startup energy. Project managers strutting around like they invented efficiency, developers arguing about whether Python was better than Java, and some intern playing the same 30 seconds of a Drake song until I wanted to throw his headphones out the window. In the middle of all that chaos, I sat quietly in my corner, reviewing the final compliance documentation for Macrovia. My name, Marcus R. Delaney, was right there on the federal paperwork. Third-party security liaison, neutral witness, clearance authority. I was the bridge between 2 companies. Nobody else at CoreLink had that level of clearance. Nobody else even wanted it. The training alone took 8 months of red tape and a psychological evaluation. It was like getting licensed to whisper secrets to the government. I didn't mind being invisible. There's freedom in it. You get to build systems quietly while the loud people drown each other in buzzwords. I wasn't looking for the spotlight. I just wanted my security protocols clean, my documentation tight, and my coffee strong. The only people who really knew what I did were the ones who understood how fragile the whole setup was. Terry in legal, Jennifer at Macrovia's compliance office, my old boss before he burned out and moved to Montana. Then Caleb Morrison arrived. That particular day, I logged into the federal clearance system to file my final authorization. The Macrovia deal was supposed to close in 72 hours. My digital signature was the last checkpoint. Everything was aligned, months of work. Security audits, protocol reviews, third-party verifications. Everything except... I paused. Something felt off. I opened my personal backup folder, marked contingency planning, and double-checked the clause I'd highlighted months earlier. Here's what. Nobody at CoreLink ever understood. I didn't build systems for them. I built systems in spite of them, because I knew someday they'd trip over their own arrogance and try to throw someone like me under the bus. And I wasn't going under. They say when a company wants to fire you quietly, they do it on a Wednesday morning with free bagels in the break room. That's exactly how it started. The email came at 9:17 a.m. All hands mandatory meeting, 10 a.m. sharp. Team updates plus organizational changes. Don't miss it. Enter Caleb Morrison, the new chief operating officer. Mid-30s, all jawline and caffeine, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my truck. He had that Silicon Valley energy. The kind of guy who thinks synergy is a personality trait and calls spreadsheets weapons of mass optimization. He smiled too much, talked too fast, kept calling himself a change catalyst. I knew within 5 minutes that in his eyes, we were all already broken. He talked for 38 minutes straight, throwing around words like agility, digital transformation, and legacy system modernization. People around me clapped like he was Steve Jobs coming down from Mount Cupertino. I just sipped my bourbon coffee and quietly fixed a security patch that was about to fail. Nobody else even knew it existed. 3 hours later, Patricia knocked again. This time she didn't bring paperwork. She brought 2 people from HR, one with a clipboard and one with dead eyes. "Marcus, can we speak privately?" She led me into a conference room like I was being told I had a terminal illness. No eye contact, no small talk, just a manila envelope slid across the table. Caleb didn't even bother showing up for my execution. The letter inside was half corporate buzzwords, half legal protection. Due to organizational restructuring and evolving technical requirements, your role no longer aligns with our strategic vision. I was still reading when the clipboard lady said, "You'll need to return your badge and equipment before 3 p.m. today." I stood up, walked toward the door, and stopped. Something caught my eye. On the reception desk, where they kept lost keys and dying office plants, there was a printed photo of my face. In red marker, someone had scrawled, "Do not let him back on the floor." It hit me like a punch to the gut. I'd trained their last 3 CTOs. I'd kept their biggest deal alive with duct tape and determination. I'd missed birthdays, anniversaries, and family dinners to babysit their server migrations. And now, I was being treated like a security risk wrapped in a cheap suit. I didn't cry. That would have given them satisfaction. I took a breath, walked back to my desk, and packed my stuff into a cardboard box like people do in bad movies. Except, this was real. My hands were steady. My heart was hammering. Everyone around me avoided eye contact, like I had contagious failure. Kevin, my assistant, mouthed, "I'm sorry," from across the room. I gave him a nod and a half smile. Then I did 2 things. First, I handed Patricia my badge. No dramatic speech. No. You'll regret this. Just a quiet goodbye and the soft click of a lanyard hitting fake wood. Second, I walked outside, sat in my truck, and pulled out my phone. I opened my Secure Access app, found my personal encryption key registry, and deleted 1 entry. Not a password, not a file. A key store certificate tied to my federal clearance that was used in every macro via integration handshake. Without it, their system couldn't verify my identity for third-party authorization. Without it, the merger couldn't close. Without me, they were holding a live grenade with no pin. I didn't smile, I didn't laugh, I didn't even breathe deeply. I just drove home with steady hands and clear eyes because they thought they were moving forward, but they'd just burned the only bridge they couldn't replace. I didn't even take my jacket off when I got home, just stood in the doorway staring at my keys like they might disappear if I blinked wrong. The house was quiet, too quiet. No Slack notifications, no urgent emails, no "Hey Marcus." Quick question, followed by 3 hours of unpaid overtime. Just the ticking of the kitchen clock and the hum of the refrigerator. The box of my work life sat on the table like a funeral arrangement. A coffee mug that said, "I void warranties," a notebook full of network diagrams and security notes, and a tin of mints I kept for the late-night troubleshooting sessions. All of it felt foreign now, like I'd been dropped out of orbit into a museum of my own burnout. I went straight to the hall closet, past the winter coats. Behind the broken printer I swore I'd fix someday was an old fireproof safe. I dragged it out, punched in the combination, and flipped through folders labeled in my neat handwriting. Legal, clearance, protocols, emergency. Then I pulled out the one marked contingency. I'd prepared it 2 years ago. Not because I was paranoid, but because I paid attention. You don't sit in merger meetings for 18 months, listen to executives lie about backup plans, and not start preparing for the moment they decide you're expendable. The folder was thick, too thick for someone who was supposedly just legacy tech support. I flipped past the organizational charts, the system architecture diagrams, the federal correspondence, until I found what I needed, the original Macrovia protocol checklist. My name was printed at the bottom of every page as certified third-party liaison, security clearance authority. I turned to the last 2 pages. Clause 9C, termination of named liaison without formal substitution and recertification, voids compliance status, and suspends legal standing of acquisition protocols. Plain English, fire me without replacing me with someone who has the same clearance level, and the merger becomes a $300 million paperweight. No Marcus, no deal. I sat down slowly, the paper edges cutting into my palms like they knew what they were worth. I'd never told anyone about this clause because nobody ever asked. Most of them didn't even read the merger documents. They just handed me requirements and assumed I'd keep the train moving while they stood on the tracks posing for LinkedIn photos. Well, not anymore. They didn't just fire me. They detonated their own timeline. And the worst part? They had no idea yet. They were probably in a conference room right now, high-fiving over my exit velocity and printing new org charts with Caleb's face at the top. I looked at the final authorization page. My digital signature was supposed to go there tomorrow morning. The ink was never going to touch it now. This wasn't just paperwork. It was federal compliance. It tied into security databases, data privacy protocols, international banking approvals. Every buried landmine the lawyers had assured everyone wouldn't be a problem as long as I stayed on board. Oops. I leaned back, let the documents rest on my lap, and exhaled slowly. This wasn't revenge. This wasn't sabotage. This was basic engineering. You remove the keystone, the arch collapses. Simple physics. I grabbed my personal laptop from the closet, powered it up, and opened the encrypted drive I hadn't touched in 6 months. Inside were backup logs, security registries, liaison protocols, everything they'd now have to reconstruct from scratch with some kid from IT who couldn't find the right VPN on his 3rd day. I checked the system logs. The deletion I'd made from my phone had propagated to the federal authentication server, time-stamped, logged, irreversible. They had no idea yet, but that was about to change. Tomorrow, Macrovia would try to complete their final verification, and the screaming would begin. I poured myself 2 fingers of bourbon and sat back down at my kitchen table. The merger document spread out like a roadmap to somewhere I'd never go again. The phone call took exactly 4 minutes. I didn't rehearse it, didn't pace around the kitchen writing bullet points like I usually did before important calls. I just sat there with the federal protocols open next to a bowl of cereal I'd forgotten to eat, and dialed the number I knew by heart. Macrovia Compliance. This is Jeremy Taylor. His voice was upbeat, too upbeat for a man standing on the edge of a $300 million cliff. "Hi, Jeremy," I said, calm and flat. "This is Marcus Delaney from CoreLink." Pause. Papers shuffling, mouse clicking. "Oh, hey, Marcus. I was just looking at your final authorization checklist. We were expecting your digital signature sometime today. Are you calling to confirm the timeline?" I leaned back in my chair, watching sunlight creep across the kitchen floor, like nothing was wrong. Not exactly, just wanted to verify something in the process flow. See if there were any updates on your end before I submit anything. Another pause. Longer this time. "Wait, you haven't submitted the final authorization yet?" "No." "Okay, but why? We're supposed to close tomorrow." His voice changed. The cheerfulness dropped like a stone. "They terminated my employment yesterday." Silence like the air had been sucked out of the phone line. "I'm sorry, what?" "No worries. It happens. Just thought you should know before proceeding with anything. If you need formal notification, I can have my attorney draft something." He sounded like he was flipping through documents frantically, searching for any indication this might be a joke, a miscommunication, a bad connection. "They fired you?" he finally asked. "I'm no longer employed at CoreLink Systems. Badge revoked, system access disabled, officially separated as of yesterday afternoon, but you're the named liaison. Your credentials are hardwired into our process. Your clearance ID is listed in our acquisition protocols. Federal compliance flags are tied to your authorization profile. We can't just substitute someone else. That's correct." I let him sit with that for a moment. "I'll send you the formal notification shortly," I added. Wouldn't want any confusion about the chain of custody. And with that, I hung up. No drama, no threats, just a clean cut through the spine of their acquisition timeline. Then I called my attorney, Lucas Bennett, bless him. Didn't even ask why until page 3 of my termination letter. By then, he was already drafting a 2-sentence statement for Macrovia's legal team. Marcus Delaney no longer represents CoreLink Systems in any professional or advisory capacity. Effective immediately. All compliance responsibilities tied to the Macrovia transaction have permanently ceased. The moment they received it, everything stopped. Macrovia halted all final authorizations, froze the merger escrow account, and suspended fund transfers. I got a system alert 5 minutes later. Authentication handshake failed. Credential mismatch. Yeah, that's going to keep happening. Then I did something petty. I pulled out my phone and texted Kevin, my old assistant. Sweet kid, still green around the edges, but smart enough to know when the foundation is cracking. They might want to check Clause 9C. Just a thought. Hope you're doing okay. No emoji, no signature, just that. 3 minutes later, he responded, "What the hell is Clause 9C? Everyone's freaking out here. Did you hear something?" I didn't answer. Let him figure it out. It wasn't cruelty. It was education. The kind you only get when you watch the ice crack beneath your feet and realize the lifeboats are already gone. I stared out my window after that. The sun had dropped behind my neighbor's fence. The house across the street still had Christmas lights blinking like a nervous tick. It was April. I felt weightless. Not happy, not angry. Just like something had shifted underground and I was finally standing where I belonged. They hadn't just handed me leverage. They'd gift-wrapped it and delivered it to my front door with a bow. By Friday morning, storm clouds were parked directly over CoreLink's headquarters, and nobody had brought an umbrella. The merger signing was scheduled for 10 a.m. Full executive theater, polished, shoes, power ties, legal briefs lined up like dominoes. Macrovia's team was supposed to roll in, flash some million-dollar smiles, and put pen to paper while everyone pretended it wasn't already a done deal. But 10 a.m. came and went. No Macrovia team, no signing ceremony, no handshakes, just silence. At 10:15, Caleb stood at the front of the executive conference room, one hand in his pocket, the other nervously clicking a pen like it might turn into a magic wand. "Well," he finally said, attempting confidence, "you know how these established firms operate, slow and methodical. We'll sort this out internally." He repeated the last part like a prayer. "We'll sort this out internally." Except the problem was already internal because 3 floors down, someone had started asking questions about Clause 9C. Kevin, bless his nervous Gen Z heart, couldn't help himself. He'd mentioned the clause to a junior analyst who went digging through the company's shared drive, found a copy of the original merger protocol I'd uploaded months earlier, and sent a screenshot to someone in legal. By 11:30, it was on Slack. By noon, the panic had legs. The general counsel stormed out of his office yelling for someone to find the original authorization logs. HR went into meltdown mode. Compliance froze, 3 pending invoices. Legal started asking who had signed off on my termination without checking dependencies. The merger lead tried calling Macrovia directly and got stonewalled with a polite but pointed, "We are currently reviewing procedural irregularities. Please stand by. That's corporate speak for, you screwed up and we're not cleaning up your mess." At 6:47 p.m., my phone rang. Unknown number, declined. Then again, CoreLink CFO calling direct. Declined. Third time, voicemail. I let it play. He sounded like someone trying not to sound like someone having a nervous breakdown. "Marcus, hi. Look, I know this isn't ideal, but we've had a small hiccup with the day's signing, and I was wondering if we could connect briefly. Just to clarify some details about the authorization chain. Nothing major, you understand. Dotting I's, crossing T's, please call me back. I played it twice, then deleted it. They thought this was a hiccup. They still didn't get it. It wasn't a hiccup. It was a system failure. I opened my laptop and checked the Federal Liaison Registry again. My name was still listed as Primary Security Authority. No substitution filed. No recertification requests submitted. No alternate credentials in place. Without my authorization key, Macrovia's automated compliance sequence couldn't pass the federal checkpoint. No handshake, no merger, no exceptions. The more they panicked, the calmer I felt. It was like watching a fire you didn't start, but you had removed the batteries from the smoke detectors, the kind of quiet power that doesn't ask for applause. It just exists. I got a text from Kevin. They're losing their minds. Legal is blaming IT. It is blaming legal. Caleb says it's a temporary credentialing glitch. This is insane. He followed up with, "Did you do this?" I sent back a single thumbs up emoji. Let them interpret that however they wanted. I made a grilled cheese sandwich, watched old westerns on TV, and answered a few emails from my side consulting business, the one I'd kept quiet for the last 8 months, just in case. At 4 p.m., a mass calendar invite went out to the entire company. Emergency all-hands meeting, 4:30 p.m., conference room Alpha. The subject line, strategic realignment and path forward discussion. Translation, damage control. That room was about to fill with buzzwords and flop sweat. And me? I wasn't even on the guest list anymore. But I was watching from 20 miles away, quiet and steady, letting the ripples spread on their own. At 9:12 a.m. Monday morning, the email landed like a bomb. Subject line, RE pending merger. Immediate compliance review required. The body was even colder. Due to the unplanned termination of the designated third-party liaison without proper substitution, Macrovia Group is formally suspending all execution phases of the acquisition. Compliance obligations under federal security protocols 4.7 and 9C remain unmet pending resolution. Transaction status indefinitely suspended. 4 sentences. No room for interpretation. No corporate spin. The kind of message that makes CFOs drop their coffee and HR directors start dry heaving into trash cans. And me? I was sitting at my kitchen table in sweatpants, eating cereal, watching it happen in real time. The buzz on LinkedIn, the financial blogs picking up the story. A post from someone at Macrovia that just said, "Lesson learned. Always verify your bridges before burning them." I couldn't have written it better myself. Lucas sent the final documentation 30 minutes later. Fully notarized, signed in blue ink, sent priority with digital confirmation. The letter was short but surgical. Mr. Marcus Delaney has no further professional, contractual, or advisory obligations to CoreLink Systems, retroactive to his termination date. All compliance duties related to the Macrovia transaction have permanently ceased. Lucas even added a nice legal flourish about proprietary knowledge and third-party vendor independence. I didn't ask him to, but Lucas is a professional. He knew exactly what was coming next. The minute that letter hit Macrovia's compliance inbox, the door slammed shut. Legally, structurally, practically, they couldn't just hire someone new and pick up where I left off. This deal wasn't a PowerPoint they could forward to the next guy. It was a hand-stitched parachute, and I'd been holding all the cords. They ripped me out, and now they were falling with no way to stop. Later that afternoon, I opened a new browser tab and registered MDS Security Consulting LLC. Took 14 minutes. Registered agent, bank account, business license pending. Just like that, Marcus Delaney was no longer an employee. I was an entity, a vendor, a firewall with AE, mailing address and licensing terms. My phone stayed quiet for most of the day. No more desperate calls from the CFO, no panicked texts from Kevin. But I knew they were talking. I could feel the boardroom earthquakes from 3 zip codes away, because now the whispers were starting. Wait, did Marcus have equity in the Macrovia pipeline? Did he build the original integration architecture? Was he operating as an independent contractor this whole time? No, I wasn't. But they wanted to believe I was, because otherwise they'd have to face the fact that I was just a salaried employee they'd ignored until I became the single point of failure, holding up their entire house of cards. Funny how people rewrite history when the present starts burning. I got a text from an unknown number that evening. Just 2 words. Well played. No signature, no context. Probably someone from legal, or maybe Macrovia's COO, or maybe one of the other invisible people who watched everything from the shadows and never said a word. I didn't reply. I was done playing games. This wasn't a game anymore. This was architecture. Clean lines, controlled demolition, an old building brought down not with dynamite, but with precision. 1 certificate revoked. 1 signature withheld, 1 key removed from the lock. The end came not with a press release, but with a whimper. Macrovia officially withdrew on a Thursday morning. The statement hit the newswires at 7:20 a.m. Due to unresolvable compliance irregularities and personnel discontinuities, Macrovia Group has terminated acquisition proceedings with CoreLink Systems. We wish all parties success in their future endeavors. 4 sentences. Corporate speak for you guys are idiots and we're out. By 9 a.m., CoreLink stock was in free fall. $300 million in projected value vanished like smoke in a tornado, but without the special effects budget. By noon, someone had leaked the investor call transcript. It was brutal. The lead investor screamed. The general counsel deflected. Caleb apparently left the call mid-sentence with his microphone still hot. I watched the CFO resign via live webcast. Pale, hollow-eyed, delivering the usual speech about new opportunities and family time, like anyone believed he was doing anything except fleeing a sinking ship. I never set foot in that building again. Not when they sent another courier with a revised offer. Not when the interim CTO asked for a quiet conversation over drinks. But I did open the door when a different courier showed up Friday morning. He handed me a small wooden box with brass corners. No return address, just a gold seal I recognized from Macrovia's executive suite. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper, was a note written in careful handwriting. Next time, they'll know who built the bridge. R. Matthews, CEO, Macrovia Group. No sales pitch, no job offer, just recognition. The kind that doesn't come with applause but lands like a gavel. I put it on my bookshelf, right between my merger documentation and my new business registration. Then I walked back to my desk. My home office didn't smell like burnt coffee and recycled ambition. It smelled like fresh lumber and possibility. 3 monitors glowed in front of me, none connected to Slack, none tied to anyone who could call me legacy technology. MDS Security Consulting had just signed its 4th client. One of them, ironically, was CoreLink. They didn't want to hire me, but they needed to. They were licensing access to one of the security frameworks I'd built, the same infrastructure they had once called outdated. Now it was critical, and I controlled the access codes. I charged them 5 times my old hourly rate. No complaints because this time they understood what they were buying. As morning sunlight spilled through the blinds, I wrapped my hands around a warm mug of bourbon coffee and watched the light catch the edge of that wooden box. A quiet Thursday morning. No meetings, no emergencies, just clarity. My phone buzzed, new email, subject line, respectfully requesting consultation terms. I smiled, took a slow sip, and let the coffee sit on my tongue before swallowing. The world could keep spinning. I wasn't chasing anyone anymore. I was the terms.